Innov8 series, it falls under the banner of Innov8 that the Innovation Hub regularly hosts in their various priority areas. What the Innov8 series, this particular one for the creative industries, this is a partnership between Monga and Company and the Innovation Hub to put a spotlight on the creative industries and the role that the creative industries have in creating jobs in the wider economy. So we're bringing various parties from whether it's music, animations, drawing or fashion, and not just to stick in your lane, but to meet and see what people are doing in other areas as well. So the Innovation Hub taking this lead is taking its mantle as an innovation hub, literally, because now we're trying to say, what can we then do with this pool of young people mostly working in the creative industries and their talents to help brands, whether it's brainstorm, find new ways to look at new products or new solutions, as well as also in terms of actually absorb them into the supply chain from a communication perspective. So brands are looking for new ways to communicate, and there's a whole group of young people that are working in this creative industry space with a lot of brilliant ideas. So if you match them together, I think that there could be some magical solutions that could come out. Well, today our inaugural event, we're looking at brands as storytellers. And we're trying to say, from the panel, we have a filmmaker, a film producer, we have an animation director, we have a creative director like myself, and then we have a panel being facilitated by a lawyer attorney who's working both in advocacy as well as now just helping. She's just one of the associate producers of Tell Me Sweet Something by Innov8. This is a group of people that we would have never met under normal circumstances. So what this Innov8 is going to do, bring all these people together, discuss brands as storytellers from our own experience, what we have experienced, and then give an idea to people that are going to be in the audience to say, this is what your company could probably do that you probably are not thinking about. That's what this event is about.
Welcome to the Innov8 evening. Today, we are going to express to you and bring it to you how we can actually get creative. Let's see how we can be innovative in this Innov8 evening. Kim Robbins will be our facilitator, and she's the Executive Director of Renaissance Strategic Solutions. Renaissance is a Joburg-based consulting firm that provides legal advisory, organizational development, and creative advisory services. You'll be pleased to know that Kim is a Harvard-educated attorney and Fulbright scholar. Moreover, she was an associate producer for the film Tell Me Sweet Something by Akin Omotoso. Like that guy. Kim is a New Yorker by birth, and she is now proudly South African by marriage. Yippee! Please take us through the evening. Thank you. Enjoy, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Wonderful to see you all and wonderful to be here. I know like I sound like I just got here yesterday, but I'm really furniture. Been here a long time and plan to be here a long time. Tonight, as was mentioned, we're going to talk about brands as storytellers, the broad potential of the creative industries, which I think is so often overlooked. The creative industries tell our stories, reflect who we are, reflect who we hope to become. There's also business. The creative industries provides an opportunity to employ people, as well as opportunities for supply chain development and enterprise development. To discuss these various elements of the creative industries, I have three panelists that I'd like to invite to the podium now. Nick Kluter is the Managing Director of Mind's Eye Creative and the National Chair of Animation South Africa. Can we please give him a round of applause? Harry Hofmeyer is a media strategist and the program director for Maxim Media Accelerator. Harry. And Munga Mkandawere, managing director and client partner, Munga and Company. I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and ask them a few questions, and then I'm going to open up to all of you to engage, because I think that's when we'll hear what's truly important, what it is that you actually care about.
Hi everyone, like we said, I'm Nick Clutie from Animation South Africa. We're a non-profit company mandated by organized industry to develop and represent South African animation. Brands, we help build brands because a lot of the work we do is corporate and commercial, but occasionally a very select few of us get to do original intellectual property. That's effectively in our case, when you're making cartoons. Some of them do augmentation, some do virtual reality, augmented reality, there's gamification. People do things in different ways, and we're involved as a subsector with other subsectors like gaming. But in terms of building brands, I would say for now, because most of the market is primarily commercial and corporate, we create the pretty pictures that people see on screens during ad breaks.
I'm a producer, television producer. I've been in this industry since about 1984, so I've earned the grey hair. Television and film, both of them, are changing so fast as the digital landscape is unfolding in front of us or within us. Traditional business models and traditional entrepreneurial approaches change daily. The one thing that is very apparent, that we're all aware of, is that in the last 3 years, the hold of the monopoly slowly slipped, and the smaller player became a player. The smaller player make breakthroughs. To me, always the example is the song Gangnam Style. How can a song like that just come overnight and gross more money than any professional product? Just absolutely amazing. Downloads became the key instead of royalties. We pay per download in that platform. And with that, the new sales mechanism came, and that is a brand. Today, we don't cast for presenters anymore only on talent. We look at followers. If I can gain a presenter with so many followers, I have those followers. I can tell them directly through that phone. So it's just interesting, that kind of change. Brands have changed the way we think. Branding has changed the way we create our product, the way we position it, and changes the way we create careers.
My name is Monga Mkandawire, and the work that I do on a daily basis in terms of working with brands is I'm sort of taking it upon myself to rally as many people from across different tracks to bring them together so that we can be able to collaborate. And part of the reason for that is I've realized that I'm multi-talented, and I'm not the only one. So today you want to sing, tomorrow you want to draw, tomorrow you want to think business, and all these things just relate to how you are. So the way I work in terms of with brand relationship is to convince brand leaders that the creative industries are a viable business, and then bringing different kind of people together who normally in a normal setting would never meet. So it's very, like today, you know, I'm meeting Nick for the first time. This is the kind of work that I do on a daily basis.
Nick, you mentioned both intellectual property and commercial brands. Talk a little bit more about how much work you do with both and its impact in animation in South Africa.
In terms of the original intellectual property, we're usually servicing foreigners' intellectual property because it's extremely difficult for South African animation producers to be able to secure the funding, to be able to retain ownership of the IP. So it's increasingly difficult. So we appeal to sources like the Industrial Development Corporation, the Department of Trade and Industry. We're very reliant on their incentives and their schemes. Most people tap into the foreign rebates, so it just means that we can get a portion of that funding back to incentivize foreigners to work with us. But we don't retain any of the IP. So we need to, that's why Animation SA exists, because we can have these interchanges, organize government, any state bodies, all these decision makers and role players and stakeholders, so we can make sure that that can change in the future.
What changes need to be made for the potential for animation to be greater and stronger so that more local content can be developed?
More immediately, it's allowing the incentive to accommodate our medium, because at the moment it's only designed for live action. So it's actually something we have in progress at the moment. I think we have 4 months for it to come into effect. So we have to work together as a team. It's a live collaboration, live document, and it's only, like for instance, one of the biggest issues is the format limitations. So half-hour programming, I don't know who of you among you are parents, but if you know your programs that your kids watch on TV are typically about 11 minutes, if it's anything from preschool. It can be anything. It could be 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. The formats change anywhere you go in the world. But the point is, half-hour segments is actually more dedicated to the adults, and that is the incompatibility with the way the market works and the way our incentive is currently schemed.
Harry, talk to us about Maxim Media Accelerator and what it actually does and what's in it for the people who are sitting in this room.
Right. I think firstly, I'd like to distinguish, I'm very proud of the name. It is the correct name, Maxim Media Accelerator. This program is not an incubator, and for a very good reason. An incubator grows companies. Take a startup, and from there grow with all the foundation, usually even with financial input. Now, in media, to have a company, most people in this country have some creative ambition, have some creative dream. To put 5 people together at a table and say to them, come up with a great idea, they will come up with it. So creative companies pop up everywhere very quickly. At the moment, there's about 70 companies that we just loosely have on a database. We work with about 38 companies that are closer to the program, and of the 38, there's about 20 companies contracted. Now, what does an accelerator do? The accelerator firstly needs to identify a company that is active, a company that is market ready, a company that understands the market, and secondly, has a product. And I put that specifically secondly. Most people start with a product. They come out and say, I've got a great story. I've got a great idea for a film. That is not an entrepreneur. That is a person with a great idea. It's a creative. It is a dreamer. So it's very hard to work through the dreamers and the creatives and the great idea people in order to find the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is actually a person who not wants access to the market, but who has access to the market. There's a lot of work required to access the market. In this current environment, the digital environment that's now unfolding, a lot of our entrepreneurs are creating the market. They don't access conventional markets. They create new markets, and they enter those new markets. They create their own following. So the new media environment is extremely innovative. Innovation is what it's about. People are, at the same time, the old platforms are still existing. There's some money, but the budgets are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. With those smaller budgets, it's an industry in crisis. But this industry in crisis still delivers multimillionaires overnight. So it's a fascinating field. The Maxim Media Accelerator have people we have this group of people that we associate with. We meet every now and then, but my job very much as the program manager is to look at this group and to identify runners. That's what I've learned. You cannot go out and take 70 people and grow them, but you have to take 70 people, put them in front of you, and identify the runners. In other words, companies that have access to market, companies that have identified a product that will serve that market. That's an individual that you then put all your focus on and accelerate. The next error that we have, or problem, is that people think in terms of that one idea. So you take that entity and you do a 3-year plan. What is this year's production? What is next year's production? What is the production of the 3rd year? The reason for that is because that 3rd year production should be a large budget production, and the script for that should be developed over 2 years. So you do all 3 of them this year. You execute the shorter one, so there's a whole growth plan required, and that is the accelerator. So we accelerate the growth of the company, and we accelerate the product to market.
You were mentioning your multiple skill set, that you have an interest in creativity and music and art, but you also bring, the mathematician, the statistician, the actuarial science. Do you see space for those two things to come together and opportunities to address this crisis in ATP that Harry just mentioned?
I think there is definitely. If you have some people have got a great idea, and they may not be the best person to execute that idea. And I think what Harry is doing in terms of identifying all these companies and identifying the runners, in the work that I do, it actually makes a lot of sense, because then you could be able to say the guy who thinks is a director, let him actually rather focus more on creating the story, and the guy who thinks is a producer actually might be a better director.
Munga, I'm going to direct this question to you. I think a lot of people look at creative industries in silos, that they're these very specific, different entities. But what is your perception of how the creative industries work or should work?
Okay, I think the best way for me to answer that question is actually to plug my book. So you all get one for free. It's outside. You see, this is a collection of lyrics and stories that inspired them. Now, if you want to look at a system, what that does is that you take a song and then you take the lyrics out of it and leave the music out. And then, but what does that do for me? I've now written a script. So when I go to perform, I'm not just blurbing. You know, when you go to a gig and you hear the musicians, you know, like start to talk rubbish, and then you say, hey, can you just start singing, please? You know, because sometimes maybe if you're talking on the cuff and maybe you're not eloquent, but what this does is that it's a little script. So before a song, you can actually use that as a script. So suddenly you've moved into performance and it's a theater piece. You know, so how do you take a song and become a book? You've moved 2 industries, and when you're performing, you move 3. And if you record that on a video, suddenly you've moved into video and film. If Nick comes and licenses my lyrics and say, oh, Monga, I really like this one. Someone says, oh, I like brown eyes. You know, I would like to license it and turn it into an animation about brown eyes. You know, suddenly we're now talking about new content. You know, because that's one of the challenges that Nick is posing for animators, that, you know, it's very difficult to get new content. So maybe, you know, you guys can license this one, you know, and and put it out.
Questions from the floor? Or comments, observations?
Evening, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Mpo. I'm actually incubated at the Innovation Hub in Braamfontein. I'm running a Media and Arts Foundation. I can really attest to everything that everyone is saying in terms of the creative sector. We are seen as more of entertainment instead of a business. And I started realizing that artists just want to perform. Artists just want to be creative. The issue is when you are going to the decision makers, you get them saying to you that we do have a budget for a production, because I'm a filmmaker. We do have a budget for a film. However, we feel that our budgets are properly better used, doing skills development. So now that's where, as a business or as a creative, you're now forced to do training instead of doing what you love.
To be a filmmaker, we are all filmmakers, but who has the sellable content? People walk in with great ideas. Who has the sellable content? When sellable content is on a screen, it shuts the room up, and the buyer says, I'm excited. That's sellable content. So I'm back again at that at that point where I say the entrepreneur must stop starting at the beginning and should start working from the end backwards. There's a sale. In order to achieve that sale, what relationship do you need? What product do you need?
I'm Shukya Kimani. I'm running a studio in Johannesburg, South Africa. We make video games. I'm part of the Maxim Digital Incubation in Braamfontein as well. I just actually wanted to touch on what Harry mentioned about making stuff, because like in the game development industry is that you've come into an age where getting tools, going on YouTube, you can make stuff. So it gets to a point where you don't want to just have an idea that you're pitching to someone. It's having a prototype, having an MVP, because when someone can feel and touch something, it's easier to sell.
My question is really, I heard Nick reference a demographic or supply to that demographic. And my question is with regards to our own demographic. One, are we giving too much easy access to content that is not localized, so to say? And two, when we look at other models where you've got companies like Tencent making a lot of money through localizing content, what then is the feasibility for us as a sector and business to actually push people to realize the value of localizing content, to speak to that demographic?
One of the biggest issues we have is the fact that we don't have the support of broadcaster, not yet anyway. We know that we're getting an MOU signed between them and DTI. Well, that's something they've had in conversation a while, completely separate from us. But if they were to support local entry, they already do for live action, but for our medium in particular, there's no content quotas for animation, which is part of the concern, which is why we need ICASA to be involved and compel them to have some semblance. Otherwise, all the animated content, all the stuff that you've seen, you're quite right, a lot of it's foreign because it's less expensive, more cost effective for them to license pre-existing foreign content than it would be for them to commission local content. At least that's the expectation. I don't think it's true. I think we can do the maths with them and make it work. Because right now, I know the SBC actually runs on, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about 80% is primarily driven through, it was 80%, it was through commissions, etc. Only 2% from government support and a very small percentage, I think it's 18% from licensing existing content. I think we can switch that model around because in the foreign territories, you have the CBBs that can actually afford to pay 25% of your total production expenditure. And if we can turn that around for that model, we can produce content here all the time. Because then it's only up to us to come up with the shortfall. So I completely agree with your point. It is true that it's too easy for us to gain access to that, and that's part of the culture that's being inculcated to us. But I think people always obsess about this idea, what is the Africanization of the content. Effectively, you just have to understand who you are and your communities, what would resonate with them. And it's just human sentiment and storytelling. You find something that resonates with the audience, they'll buy it. It's the same thing as Nigeria. Most of its economy is entirely domestic. They produce everything in country. Very few, if any, of their content is exported. Very little. That's because they have a self-sustaining industry, because they consume their own content. So I totally agree with you. That's absolutely what we have to do.
My name is Kiole Mothaung. I'm a medical scientist. And I'm going to say this. Scientists, medicine, they are computer illiterate. And I mean it. The problem in South Africa, and in most of the cases, even as an entrepreneur, people want to work in solo. And this is where the problem lies. Now, we've got a raw data at MRC, because everyone there is medically, all of them, they are computer illiterate. We need people with experience who they can help us in terms of this data. We've also got the so-called digital medicine. I've heard the name digital medicine when I was in the US, according to how it works. This is also lacking in Africa, in South Africa. Let me talk about it. And on the other hand, it's because of, people always want to say, you want to understand my field? Oh, myself, my field is so complicated. There's no field that is very, very complicated. You must make sure, and to make me that I must understand your field so that you can understand my field so that we can work together. So what I would rather suggest is about time that we start working together from the IT, any other engineering, medical, mathematics, media, arts, we can all work together. The lady just mentioned now, and she's not here, that whenever she applies for funding, they always reject it. I wanted to tell her why. Yes, they will reject it because they are now funding collaborative projects. So this is the way, if you need funding, we need to start collaborating in order for you to be able to get funding. You're not going to get it alone, I can tell you.
I think that is a very powerful way to end this discussion, which has all been about collaborating and kind of getting out of silos.
And on behalf of the Innovation Hub management and staff, I would like to extend a vote of thanks to you, our panel, Kim, Nick, Harry, Munga. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you for educating us. A lot of people think that I think I'm a creative. I definitely not. I'm just a marketer, and yes, it's supposed to be creative. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our guests will agree with us that, you know, they learned something. They were walking away with some knowledge from the session. And this is our first installment of the Creative Industries Innov8, and we are looking and working at having more of such. And to you, our guests, thank you so much for your time as well. We do appreciate, we do understand it's during the week, so it's not very easy to come to such. We do appreciate you all being here. At the Innovation Hub, we don't let people go away without having been fed. So please don't run away. We've got some food and some drink for you. Please drive safely though. We are not going to be liable for what happens. So please join us afterwards for the networking session. The panelists will be there. The Innovation Hub management team along with the program managers will be there to interact with you and will be able to answer any questions you might have.
Today, my role was to facilitate a conversation about brands as storytellers. Our objective was to engage in a conversation that would enable networking amongst creatives and even those outside of the creative industries. And I think that happened today. We educated some people. I think some important lessons were conveyed about the entrepreneurial side and the creative side, and also reminding people that there is funding available, that 3% net profit after tax that big corporations have to develop suppliers and to develop enterprises. The creative industries need to be getting their fair share of that funding. I think those messages came out today.
Well, I feel very good about it in terms of the questions that came through, the comments from the insights that just came through from the panelists as well, were just things that, you know, where you could not find anywhere. So I think it promises to be a very fruitful series. What I also like was Chris from an engineering firm that came to actually put out a call and a brief for new ideas from young people, which is exactly what we're trying to achieve.
Personally, I believe that the sooner we help our entrepreneurs and we embrace this whole world of development and of upskilling and focus it in on delivering towards our GDP, improving our product. That must be the ultimate goal of any program, such as the Maxim Media Accelerator. So it's taking the entrepreneur and assisting him visualize, get a product that can sell. Find your own market where it will sell. That makes you an entrepreneur. So that's why I love it, that it's innovation in media, also innovation in finding new platforms, finding new ways to speak to these communities. It's changing by the day, and be part of that change.
That's why it's so critical that we have these partnerships with the Innovation Hub and MICTC, DTI, National Film and Video Foundation. Anything we can do together as a collaborative network to enhance our talents in our country, to be able to produce much higher standard work. The point is we have to work a coordinated effort to be able to enter into the marketplace because we're quite some time behind. So we've got some catch up to do.
The Innov8 events are our means of trying to get the various players in the innovation ecosystem to come together, have a conversation and network and hopefully make the right connections. And we've been running this in the main priority sectors of ICT, bioeconomy, as well as green economy, and wherever we support entrepreneurs. And in the last couple of years, we've been fortunate to get involved with the creation of Maxim Media, which is one of our accelerators for the creative industries. And in the last year, we've also set up Maxim Digital, which is a gaming, animation, and virtual reality incubator. And we see a real opportunity for South Africa in the creative industries. As a people, we are very creative. And if you look at the demographics, more than 50% of our population is under the age of 25. And most of them are very creative. And also the the barriers to entry into the creative industries are not as high as the other sectors. And we've taken a view that we need to be able to do a whole range of things to be able to stimulate the creative industries. But it's not just the creative industries as we've known it, but there's this interface of the creatives as we've known it, but also the interface with digital. And so we've put out this first Innov8 as a means of then starting to stimulate dialogue, discussion in terms of, and also highlighting the opportunities that lie in this particular sector. And as we move forward, we're going to be trying to bring on board other partners so that we can be able to really support the young people in this particular sector.